The last time F1 saw 11 different teams was the 2016 season, as Haas joined the grid. That same season, Marussia changed their name to Manor Racing, but they would only last a single season. The driver lineup saw future Formula E champion Pascal Wehrlein partner Rio Haryanto before he was replaced by a debut in Esteban Ocon halfway through the season. They only scored a single point that season before falling into administration and leaving the sport altogether. But what if they were to come back? Now, to answer this, I loaded up F125 MyTeam with a modern take on the team, signed a driver pairing of Nicholas Holov and Taylor Barnard before simulating 10 seasons into the future of Formula 1. Before we begin though, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and consider becoming a channel member to help support the channel. McLaren have managed to replicate their real-life success to secure the Constructors' Championship, beating out Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes. Manor Racing returned with a bang and finished dead last, and they failed to score any points. As a result, both drivers finished at the bottom of the standings, with Nicholas Holov managing to beat out his teammate Taylor Barnard. The reigning champion Max Verstappen fell out of contention this season and finished in P4, just behind Charles Leclerc, who took his Ferrari to 3rd place. The top 2 spots were then occupied by both McLaren drivers, with the real-life champ Lando Norris failing to match his success in the digital world. This means that instead, Oscar Piastri would win his very first Drivers' Championship, as he finished just 26 points ahead of his teammate. The champion ended the season with 5 race wins, on par with Charles Leclerc, who also managed 5. The runner-up Lando Norris and the former champ of Max Verstappen would then win 3 races each. There's only a small shake-up in the driver lineups, with Max Verstappen entering retirement, while both Esteban Ocon and Taylor Barnard being dropped from their respective teams. Pierre Gasly returns to the Red Bull team, with Paul Aron coming in to debut at Haas, and Pepe Marti coming in to debut at Manor Racing. 2 top drivers will then swap teams, with George Russell heading to Maranello, while Charles Leclerc joins the Silver Arrows to round out the driver moves. The only department hit with regulation changes is the aerodynamics department, which rounds out the first season. McLaren were knocked off the top of the standings, being overtaken by both Mercedes and Ferrari, with the Silver Arrows coming out on top. Manor Racing failed to make any improvements and once again finished down in P11. Both drivers once again finished in P21 and 22, with Pepe Marti beating his teammate in his debut season. The reigning champion Oscar Piastri fell all the way down to P6 this season, with last season's runner-up Lando Norris only managing to finish in 3rd place. The newest Ferrari driver George Russell made his first appearance into the top 3 to finish as the runner-up, just behind his replacement. The Mercedes driver Charles Leclerc has managed to win his first ever Drivers' Championship, winning in his first season away from Ferrari. It was a very strong season from the champion, outscoring Russell by over 70 points, with Leclerc taking 7 race wins, while Russell and Norris won 3 races each. Caulz managed to secure his first race wins at Williams, while former champ Oscar Piastri won just a single race. Both Red Bull and Manor will then drop another driver this season, with Yuki Tsunoda and Nicholas Holov losing their seats. The Racing Bulls driver Liam Lawson moves over to Manor Racing, while Zane Maloney comes in for his debut. Replacing Tsunoda at Red Bull will be Oliver Behrman, while Nico Hülkenberg moves back to Haas, and Zach O'Sullivan is brought in by Kik Sauber. The champion Charles Leclerc is on the move again, swapping seats with Oscar Piastri, while the runner-up George Russell returns to Williams as he swaps seats with Alex Albon. Now once again just a single regulation change, with the powertrain department being the ones hit. The 3rd season saw a 3rd different Constructors' Champion, with Williams rising to the top, overtaking former champions Mercedes, who were also overtaken by McLaren. Manor Racing are still yet to score their first point and will remain in P11, with their new driver taking P21, just ahead of Pepe Marti in P22. After moving to McLaren, former champ Charles Leclerc dropped down to P4, being overtaken by the driver he swapped seats with after Oscar Piastri finished in 3rd place. The top 2 would then be occupied by the newest Constructors' Champions, which saw Carlos Sainz finish in 2nd place, only 29 points ahead of Piastri, but almost 120 points behind the latest champion. George Russell would be that driver to top the standings upon returning to his Williams team, and had an incredibly dominant season. He took a total of 9 race wins across the entire season, with his teammate Carlos Sainz only winning twice. The rest of the race wins were then split evenly between Oscar Piastri, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso and Pierre Gasly, who all won a single race each. Another large season in terms of driver moves, sparked by the retirements of both Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Nico Hülkenberg will also lose his seat and possibly enter retirement as well, while Manor once again drop their driver as Pepe Marti leaves Formula 1. Isaac Hadjar will take the open Haas seat, while Tim Tramnitz comes in at the Racing Bulls for his debut. 2 drivers will return, with Yuki Tsunoda joining Aston Martin, and Esteban Ocon returns to drive for his old team of Manor. The newest champion will replace one of the greatest of all time, as George Russell moves to Ferrari, while Oliver Behrman joins Williams, Gabriel Bortoleto joins Red Bull, and Zane Maloney is signed by Kik Sauber. The final seat at the Racing Bulls is then given to Nicholas Holov, with the Formula 3 icon returning next year. The aerodynamics department is then once again hit with regulation changes, this time alongside the untouched chassis department. Williams were able to retain the Constructors' Championship just ahead of Aston Martin, who jumped up to 2nd place, finishing on the same points as McLaren, but would come out ahead. Manor have finally achieved their first points, scoring 2 this season, which saw them jump up to P9 in the standings. Those points were scored by their new signing Esteban Ocon, who managed to finish in P16, while Liam Lawson remained at the very bottom of the sport. Last season's champion George Russell dropped down to P5 after moving to Ferrari, with his replacement Oliver Behrman making his first appearance in the top 3 to finish in 3rd place. He finished just behind his teammate Caulz, who remained as the runner-up, while another brand new champion was crowned. A brand new champion for this game as well, I believe, after UKESIDE won his very first Drivers' Championship while driving for Aston Martin. He wasn't too far ahead of Sainz with around 60 points separating the pair, with Tsunoda winning 5 times, but Sainz won just 3. The other Williams driver, Oliver Behrman, managed 4 race wins, while both former champions of Charles Leclerc and George Russell won 2 races each. Now, only one driver will leave the sport at the end of this season, with Charles Leclerc leaving the McLaren team and the new champion Yuki Tsunoda moving to Papaya. Kimi Antonelli will then move into the championship winning car, while Franco Colapinto moves to Mercedes and Zach O'Sullivan is set to join Alpine. The open seat at Kick-Sauber is then given to Pepe Marti as he makes his return. Racing Bulls driver Nicolas Solov will leave the sport once again, with Liam Lawson returning to his former team, and Pierre Gasly makes a move to try and continue Manor's improvements. Race winner Oliver Behrman returns to Red Bull, with George Russell also returning to his Williams car. This opens a seat at Ferrari, which Nicolas Solov then moves into, keeping him in the sport. Only the durability department is then hit with regulation changes at the end of this season. With only small changes coming in, the Williams team were able to retain their title once again, with Aston Martin dropping to P5 and Mercedes returning to finish as runners-up. The newest Manor Racing team has had their best season yet, scoring 23 points and finishing up in P8. The majority of those points were scored by the new signing Pierre Gasly, while Esteban Ocon finished with only 3 points. Yuki Tsunoda dropped all the way down to P11, with his replacement Kimi Antonelli taking his car to 3rd place. Carlos Sainz would remain in 2nd place for the 3rd season in a row, with a returning champion being crowned. George Russell returned to the top of the standings after he returned to Williams, scoring 288 points compared to Carlos Sainz, who only scored 199. George Russell managed 8 race wins on his way to another title, while Carlos Sainz actually failed to win any. Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris and Oliver Behrman all won 2 races each, while both Piastri and Albon achieved a single win. Haas driver Paul Aron is then dropped from his seat, much like Zane Maloney and Lance Stroll, who will also both leave the sport. Nicolas Solov leaves Ferrari after just a single season to join Haas, with Italian driver Kimi Antonelli joining the Italian outfit. Yuki Tsunoda makes a return to Aston Martin in hopes of another title, while Pierre Gasly leaves Manor in favour of McLaren. This allows Manor to sign Oliver Behrman, and Red Bull bring Charles Leclerc back into the sport to try and be competitive next season. Both Racing Bull drivers will then leave, with Tim Tramnitz joining Kick-Sauber and Liam Lawson moving over to Aston Martin. The Racing Bulls lineup will then be Jack Crawford and Formula 3 icon Callum Voisin as we enter the second half of the simulation. Also going into the second half will be some regulation changes to the aerodynamics, chassis and durability departments to try and shake some things up. The constructor standings actually looked very similar to Season 1, with McLaren returning to the top for the first time since that first season, ahead of Ferrari and Red Bull, with the former champs Williams dropping to P4. Manor Racing remained around the same level after they finished down in P9, but did drop to 11 points, mainly scored by Oliver Behrman. Andrea Kimi Antonelli remained in 3rd place this season despite moving over to the Ferrari team, and finished just a single point ahead of Oscar Piastri. The runner-up spot is occupied by the returning Red Bull driver Charles Leclerc, with yet another brand new champion set to be crowned. This season saw Lando Norris rise to the top of the standings to win his first Drivers' Championship in this alternate universe, half a decade after real life. Now, Norris managed to secure 6 race wins across the entire season, while both Leclerc and Antonelli won 3 times each. Oscar Piastri added another race win to his tally, much like George Russell, Pierre Gasly and Carlos Sainz, who also all won a single race each. That would end up being Sainz's last race win, as at the end of Season 6 he has decided to retire. He will be replaced at Williams by Liam Lawson, with Pepe Marti joining Aston Martin, allowing Richard Verschoor to enter the sport to drive for Kick-Sauber. Manor will once again drop their driver Esteban Ocon, bringing in race winner Oscar Piastri, while Zach O'Sullivan moves over to Mercedes, allowing Roman Stanek to make his debut with Alpine next year. Alongside these moves, both the aerodynamics and chassis departments are hit with some regulation changes. Without much change, McLaren remained as the Constructors' Champions, with Red Bull overtaking the Ferrari team. The new Manor Racing team once again recorded their highest finish yet, up in P6, with Oliver Behrman moving up to a solid P12, just behind his brand new teammate Oscar Piastri, who finished in P10. Last season's runner-up Charles Leclerc dropped outside of the top 3 this season, finishing just behind George Russell, who moved up to that 3rd place spot. 20 points ahead would see Kimi Antonelli finish in the runner-up spot, but once again behind Lando Norris, who won back-to-back world titles. He took another 6 race wins this year, while George Russell managed 3, and the trio of Antonelli, Leclerc and Gasly all won twice. The final race win was then secured by Red Bull driver Gabriel Bortoleto. The reigning champion Lando Norris will then leave the sport and retire after winning back-to-back championships, with the runner-up Kimi Antonelli moving to the new champions. George Russell makes a big move to Ferrari, with Zane Maloney coming in to drive for Williams. Tim Tramnitz will also leave, with his seat being given to Enzo Fittipaldi, while Zach O'Sullivan and Pepe Marti swap seats going into Season 8. The chassis department is then once again hit with regulation changes, this time paired with a powertrain department. With Lando leaving, Red Bull managed to rise to the top of the Constructors' Championships, beating out McLaren, while Ferrari remained in third place, just ahead of the Manor Racing team, who made an incredible jump up to P4. Both Piastri and Behrman made big jumps up the driver standings as well, with a pairing in P5 and 6, as the Aussie finished just 6 points ahead. Now, after moving to Ferrari, George Russell remained in third place, being overtaken by Charles Leclerc, who returned to the top 3. However, no one was able to stop Kimi Antonelli, as he won his very first World Drivers' Championship, finishing just under 40 points ahead of Leclerc. The new champion Kimi Antonelli managed 6 race wins on his way to his title, with the runner-up Leclerc only securing 3. George Russell, on the other hand, won 5 races, while both Bortoleto and Alex Albon won a single race each. Another 2 drivers will lose their seats, with Victor Martins and Nicolas Solov both being dropped from their teams. Richard Verschoor moves over to Alpine, with the open seats at Kick Sauber and Haas being provided for Tim Tramnitz and Esteban Ocon respectively. Former champ Yuki Tsunoda will also leave the sport for now, with Liam Lawson returning to Aston Martin and Franco Colapinto joining Williams. Pierre Gasly moves over to the Silver Arrows, while McLaren poach Oliver Behrman away from Manor. Charles Leclerc leaves Red Bull and heads to the Manor team, with their other driver Oscar Piastri replacing him at Red Bull. This means the Manor team will have a completely new lineup as they sign Yuki Tsunoda, which help keeps him in the sport. Now once again the chassis department is hit with regulation changes, being the sole target this year. Red Bull's run at the top didn't last very long, as McLaren would return to the top to win another Constructors' Championship, with the former champs dropping down to third place, being overtaken by the Manor Racing team. Manor Racing recorded their highest finish yet again, with Charles Leclerc's first season at the new team saw him finish in P4, but behind his teammate. That meant that a Manor driver actually finished inside the top 3, as Yuki Tsunoda took his car to third place. He was still around 30 points behind the runner-up spot, which was taken by George Russell, who moved back into title contention. But the title fight wasn't even close, as Kimi Antonelli took another Formula 1 world title, scoring over 330 points and taking 11 race wins across the season. George Russell, on the other hand, would only secure 2 race wins, while both Manor drivers of Tsunoda and Leclerc, alongside Gabriel Bortoleto, all won a single race each. 2 more drivers will lose their seats and unfortunately not make it to the final year of the simulation, as both Enzo Fittipaldi and Roman Stanek are dropped, with Kick Sauber signing Ritomo Miata and Alpine bringing back Victor Martins. We'll see Pierre Gasly disappear for now, with Oscar Piastri moving over to the Mercedes team, being replaced by Zane Maloney at Red Bull. Liam Lawson once again moves to Williams, with the other Williams driver Franco Colapinto taking his seat at Aston Martin. The final seat is then that open Williams seat, which is given to Pierre Gasly, allowing him to finish off the decade in Formula 1. Now, the final regulation changes will affect both the powertrain and durability departments, which will hopefully give us some change for the final season. Now, despite those changes, the top 4 of the Constructors' Championship remained the exact same, with McLaren winning the final title ahead of Manor Racing and the Ferrari teams. Yuki Tsunoda fell out of the top 3 this season, finishing in P6, with George Russell also dropping a position after he finished in 3rd place. The other Manor driver Charles Leclerc improved on his position, but couldn't finish any higher than P2, and couldn't do anything to stop Antonelli. Of course, Kimi Antonelli went on to win yet another World Drivers title, scoring even more points this season, but still ended with 11 race wins. The runner-up Charles Leclerc won another 2 races, just like George Russell, while the Red Bull driver Gabriel Bortoleto finished the season with a single race win. And that reaches the end of the 10 seasons with the return of Manor Racing. Now let's add everything we've seen and see who the most successful drivers were. Now first of all, looking at the Constructors' Championship, in which 4 different teams were able to taste success, with both Red Bull and Mercedes winning a single title each. Williams had a strong decade to return to winning ways after they managed 3 titles, but McLaren would end the simulation winning 5 titles to be the most successful team. 6 different drivers were able to win a driver's title, with all 6 being new champions. Oscar Piastri won first, with Charles Leclerc and Yuki Tsunoda also winning a single title each. Lando Norris managed 2 titles, just like George Russell, but Antonelli ended the decade winning the title on 3 different occasions. At the end of the 10 seasons, 13 different drivers had won a Formula 1 race, with Alonso being the only driver to win once, but he did achieve that long-awaited 33rd race win. Alex Albon managed his first 2 wins, with Verstappen only winning another 3. Pierre Gasly and Gabriel Bortoleto won 4 races each, with Yuki Tsunoda and Oliver Behrman winning 6. Carlos Sainz was able to win 8 races, just behind Piastri who won 9, before a jump up to 21 wins scored by Lando Norris. Just ahead was Charles Leclerc with 26, but just behind George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, who both ended with 35 race wins. And that's going to wrap up another video on F1 25. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you haven't already. There'll be links in the description to the Manor mod that I've used, as well as the links to my various social media platforms. I've just created a Patreon which you can sign up to access any of the mods I create, or if you just want to support the channel even further. There will also be the link to my Discord server, which is the best way to receive updates about videos on this channel. But that is going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.